Welcome to The Digital Footprint, a podcast for leaders in healthcare, public health, and education who are looking to leverage technology to solve problems and make a big impact. In each episode, we interview innovators and entrepreneurs who are solving the most challenging problems facing these industries. Join us as we dig into the colossal tasks involved in bringing a new digital product to life. Welcome to The Digital Footprint.
Hello, and welcome to The Digital Footprint. I'm Richard Sims, and this podcast is brought to you by Tyrannosaurus Tech, an award-winning technology partner dedicated to designing and developing high-impact software products. We have a great episode in store today. Very excited to be joined by Junior Bernadin, Dean of Students and Director of IT for the Ron Clark Academy. Welcome, Junior.
Hey, how you doing, Richard?
Very good, very good. I'm so happy to have you as a guest. So we've been working together for almost 3 years now.
I
think so. And I have to say, working with you and with RCA has definitely been one of the more fun and fulfilling experiences for our team. RCA is obviously a great organization, makes a huge impact across the U.S. and worldwide, really. So it's been awesome for us to kind of play a small role in particularly the House Points app, of course. And yeah, so much about RCA is so unique. The school, the house system, the House Points app. So I'm really looking forward to unpacking things a little more in this episode and, just hearing your perspective on innovation in education in general. So let's jump right in. First, do you mind just taking a minute or so to quickly introduce yourself, tell folks a little bit about the Ron Clark Academy?
All right, greetings everyone. My name is Junior Bernadin. I'm the Dean of Students and IT Director at the Ron Clark Academy. I joined Ron Clark Academy at, I believe it was June 3rd of 2009, so I've been there for over a decade, and I came at the ending of the school's second year in operation. And when we talk about the Ron Clark Academy, it is a very dynamic and innovative middle school that you can find here in South Atlanta. But one of the things that makes the Academy extremely special is it's received a lot of notoriety for its educational and teaching techniques, the ways that we've been able to create great relationships with our students and our families and so forth. But we also serve as a model school that allows visiting educators to come from all over the world to come and learn about our innovative training methods, to attend workshops hosted by our master teachers, and also to get a very unique classroom observation piece that allows them to see some of these methods in action. I think this has led us to, we've trained over, I think right now, probably at least 100,000 educators from across the world, and virtually we've probably trained close to double or triple that amount. But we really love what we've been able to do. We're a small school with a small staff doing some really big things. And we're also a nonprofit. So one of the things people don't necessarily know about our school is that the school was built by the community. So for instance, its very inception, Mr. Clark wrote a book called The Essential 55. It became one of Oprah's book picks. And, before you know it, it was number 2 in the nation. And Mr. Clark took those proceeds and decided to build a school with Kim Bearden here in Atlanta, Georgia. And that's ended up becoming the Ron Clark Academy. But when they initially bought the school, which is an old, dilapidated, 100-year-old factory here in South Atlanta, in the historic South Atlanta district, all the money was gone. So they turned to the community. And the community over years pretty much Frankensteined the building together. And, somebody might not have been able to contribute an entire bathroom, but they might contribute a stall, a pipe. Promethean jumped on board. So we're going to provide you with some Promethean boards. Dell and Intel jumped in and said, we're going to provide you with some servers and some computers for your classroom. So we slowly the school began to become pieced together. So we've always been a school that's really just been rooted in community involvement and people who worked at corporations and companies who were always looking for a place to truly make a difference. And this small school in South Atlanta is literally impacting education and creating a revolution that's going across the world.
Very cool. Yeah, it is a very magical place, to say the least. I mean, of course, I was familiar before we truly started working with you all, but I hadn't been to the school, and it's pretty amazing, getting that initial tour. So another question, the last year and a half, of course, have been particularly wild in the education space. COVID has really turned everything on its head, and unfortunately, it's not over by any stretch, it seems. So as a thought leader in the space, what has it been like navigating this for RCA? Have others looked to you all for guidance on how to adapt and thrive in this new environment?
I think we looked at this pandemic in a couple of ways. Honestly, when it first hit us, there was I can think about the thought process that was kind of going through our mind, like, oh, maybe this is going to last for like a month, right? Like, so you had this expectation that it possibly wasn't going to be as bad as it was. So we were like thinking about creating this very like temporary plans, and we're going to just be watching things and looking for a moment for us to kind of come back in. And the more it kind of started like lasting a lot longer, like we were like, oh, wait a minute. Like, we're literally having to pivot right now. Because as I mentioned earlier, we're a nonprofit private school. And actually our students attend the Ron Clark Academy. They pay tuition. Our tuition is $18,000 a year. Now, the average family is not going to be able to afford $18,000 a year. So the revenue from our educator training and some of our other programming actually helps to subsidize scholarships for our students. So the average student is paying about 40 to 50 bucks a month, which again, when you look at the difference on what the price would be if it was $18,000 a year, that's a huge difference. And the way that we've been able to do that is through educator training. But in the midst of a pandemic, we can't train educators. And we're also trying to run a school at the same time. So it's like you're going through the business aspect of it, trying to figure out ways to kind of keep the lights on and keep people paid, and making sure that our building doesn't lapse on payments and so forth. So we are literally trying to figure out not only a business plan, but going through all the struggles of education at the same time. Because on the education side, it was, all right, great, we happen to be one-to-one already, which was really awesome, right? So we happen to be one-to-one already, and we were like, oh, okay. So the students have their iPads. I worked together with a group of teachers, all the teachers who love embracing technology. We came up with a plan, started ironing out those plans, shared those, and literally in a weekend, we literally took a weekend, this entire weekend, and turned around, and before you know it, we were hosting virtual classes. Then we ran into some other situations, like, well, what if a family doesn't have a strong internet connection, and what if a student's technology happens to start acting funky while that is happening? So we have staff members who are jumping in cars, driving around, delivering hotspots to our students, and swapping out iPads and so forth. So it literally was kind of like all hands on deck. It gave me the feeling of a mobile tech company that's going around and handling the business of its clients. So like we were all over the place. But then we were also now working with the teachers, making sure that the classroom and their grade books and different things were set up correctly so that the user experience on the student side and on the parent side could be something that would be manageable. And then we had a huger piece because we're a school that's rooted in relationships, and we're probably the most huggingest school you can ever find. Like, there are moments where 40 or 50 kids are running and hugging another kid because they just earned their RCA coat, which is a huge tradition at our school, right? So we have that. We're very family oriented. We have parents who kind of come in and volunteer hundreds of hours a year just to our school. And now we're being told that we have to remain separate. It was extremely tough. But we use things like Zoom, and our teachers are so creative and our staff is so creative that we started figuring out fun ways of engaging with the students, even via Zoom, playing little games, finding technologies that allow collaboration amongst multiple people all at the same time. We did movie nights. We actually did a virtual family vacation via Zoom, where for literally, it was about a week and a half, we put together several different activities that involve scavenger hunts, a kitchen rock band, and karaoke. Like, we did so many things on our end. Again, just trying to find ways of becoming innovative. But when we look at this pandemic the most, what it has done is allowed us to actually create new solutions. Because the method, the creativity of our educators and our master teachers in the building, we were like, wait a minute, this is cool. Yeah, this is another cool platform that we can use that could help to interact or create a awesome learning experience. So what did we end up doing? We actually started doing some of the virtual PDs for free on our Ron Clark Academy Facebook page. So once a month or every other month, we were there. We were kind of sharing some techniques, some things that we found. We were highlighting people who were still using the house system, because y'all, the house system is that's the foundation of our school. And when I talk about relationships and we talk about what it's been able to do, it's beyond PBIS, which is a positive behavior intervention or improvement system that is used in a lot of schools. It's beyond that. It is a way that you're creating a home for students, a home away from home, where they feel seen, where they feel heard, and they have the opportunity to not only interact with their educators and their peers, but to feel that sense of belonging. And belonging can go a long way in the education space and helping students to truly reach their full potential. So when we saw all of these things happening and the house events we were doing, we have a ton of traditions, and we started trying to keep these traditions virtual. Like, for example, we had a pep rally, which was like house cheers. We do this every Friday, where we call a student of the week that will come up to spin the wheel to earn some additional points for their house. But the students also get to showcase like a song, a skit, a talent of some sort. They get to dance and show off their house pride. Well, here we are virtually. We're like, we do this in our lobby, jam packed with a bunch of parents and students, and everybody's there cheering. We're like, well, what happens now? So we told the kids, now you all are going to have to do this virtually. And the kids responded. And when I tell you they responded, they were using their cell phones. We had some students who had great skills in editing, some students who had no skills who decided, I'm going to learn these skills. I'm going to go online. I'm going to go find a platform. And students started teaching each other. And before you know it, every Friday we would gather on a Zoom, and we're like, all right, the first house up is Izabindi. And Izabindi would come on and we would play the Izabindi video, and everybody would be cheering and chanting. And it was a moment. It was a moment for us. And that's when we recognized, like, yeah, being virtual is different and is no way by any means the same as being in person and having that personal interaction and being there with people. But technology did provide quite a few ways of us still trying to remain connected as a school.
Yeah, totally. And I remember talking with you through some of those transitions, and I feel like RCA is as best equipped as possible, even though it was such a challenge to, I think, pivot, like you said, and, you're very technology forward in general. So, pushing that much further, obviously helped you all figure out a new paradigm. So you obviously were speaking to the house system a little bit, and it's something I want to expand upon. RCA has such a unique culture, of course, and the house system is, a big part of that, kind of intertwined into everything. So I'd love for listeners to better understand the house system, where it came from, how it's evolved, and then, of course, the work that we've done together has been, building out kind of more of a platform to support the house system in other schools. So how did it go from, an internal cultural thing to a much bigger kind of global presence? A lot of questions there, but just expanding on the house system, I think, would be awesome.
Well, the house system, when we think about the house system, when we think about its origins, this is something that's been around for hundreds of years, that date back to, days in England, where there were schools, and these schools had houses where students were kind of sorted into it. But it didn't kind of really become popular here in the United States per se until like Harry Potter. Like, so when you look at Harry Potter, you have the houses, you have Gryffindor, you have Slytherin, you have the different houses, and it was a huge hit in American culture for students, for adults, people who just love the magical world. And when we look at RCA is like the educational Hogwarts of schools. Nothing about it looks small. We have a huge dragon in our gymnasium. We have a wheel. We have some magic, or what we call some secret doorways. And we have like a lot of little secrets. So it's very like mystical, magical. Kind of gives you a very Harry Potter type feel in our school, right? So of course, with Harry Potter and the whole house system, that concept, we gave it a different twist, because when you look at Harry Potter, like the house system is very interesting, because you have teachers trying to kill students, and you have all type of mischief that's kind of happening. We're like, no, that's not what we want for an environment. And what we decided was that, no, we wanted something to kind of really feel like home for our students. And we didn't want it just based off of competition. We wanted it based off of relationships. But we also wanted a global presence that's kind of associated with it, because we believe in creating global citizens for our students. That's one of the reasons our students have been able to kind of travel the world over the years and, meet interesting people, collaborate with multiple cultures, because again, it creates a better sense of appreciation for our students and the cultural exchanges that they can have with other students around the world. So when we look at the house system, and when it started at the Ron Clark Academy, the school opened in 2007. And in 2007, we had our house system. And the house system, our students were sorted. They were competing throughout the year for points. And we decided to use some software to also display the status of the houses as they're kind of going on. And that did a couple of things. That allowed our students to be seen for their contributions to each house. But then that also allowed them to work together as a team to kind of say, oh my gosh, we want the house cup, the house championship. And they wanted the opportunity to do that. But what's the most important about what we do at RCA is that we believe in developing relationships. So this was also an opportunity for the houses to bond with one another. And by bonding with one another, creating that sense of belonging, what that does is helps to kind of pretty much meet the psychological needs of students, especially in the middle school, elementary school, and even high school era. It allows us to meet the needs of those students in hopes that they can reach their full potential, their self-actualization. So when we go, and there's a lot of research that's associated around that. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it talks about when students have their basic needs met and we meet their psychological needs, then they can actually meet their full potential. So we're like that. The house system is almost like that middle piece, right? It's that middle piece that allows us to kind of create connections, friends, but also allows students to feel accomplished when they're like winning something or earning points for their house. And that whole system that we have at RCA, it creates an interesting dynamic because of the way that we've taken houses and the way that we've taken relationships and the way that we've taken the spirit of competition, but also the importance and understanding of character and how you treat others and making sure that those are valued just as much as getting an A in the classroom. I think that is what makes a huge difference in our school. And what we found was when we look at the typical student, their very first day at a new school, what goes through their mind? They're frustrated. Sometimes they're nervous. They're like, am I going to make new friends? Am I going to like my teachers? Are people going to like me? Now you have that small group of people that it don't matter where you put them. They're going to go into school and, turn it around. Your extroverts or people who are just on the scene in your face. But that isn't the majority. The majority is thinking about how are they going to fit into this new space. And in our building, on the first day of school, our new students are brought up and they're called up one by one. So imagine this, you're a new student, you are on this platform and podium and you see all the houses all in their house sections and they have pom-poms and signs and everything else, right? We have a Facebook Live going on where our parents, who are a huge portion or a huge part of the magic that we create with our house system, they're watching live and visiting educators from around the world are, oh my God, it's the Ron Clark Academy wheel spin, right? It's a sacred ceremony for us that we kind of allow people to see virtually. But in our building, that moment when it says, Jada Liddell, and Jada comes down, and Jada goes walking, and as Jada is walking, the entire building is going crazy. Jada, we want you in our house. Jada, please come. Spin red, spin blue, spin. So everybody is literally like freaking out, including the teachers. The teachers in the building are like sweating out hairdos and we're sweating out our shirts because we're cheering. No, Jada, we want you here. And Jada goes up to, we have a wheel. That's how our students are sorted. They spin a wheel. And honestly, y'all, it's probability. But for us, we tell the students it's their destiny. Because this destiny they're going to spend and they're going to be a part of this house for a lifetime, not just the moments that they're going to be spending in the school. So they go and spin the wheel, they run all the way up the stairs, they slide down our slide, and when they come out, the students don't know what house they've landed in, but the house that they've landed in runs out, picks them up, tosses them up in the air. Then sometimes there's confetti and everything else, and like everyone's cheering and y'all. It is a moment, and if there's like a Super Bowl moment where like you're looking and you just won the game, the confetti, the fireworks. That's how our kids kick off the very first day of school. And that's through the house system. So, of course, I love what we've been able to do kind of over the years because we began tweaking things and looking at different ways it's been impacting our students and our parents. But also, since we're a learning lab for many educators around the world, we're like figuring things out. We're like, hey, this is something that needs to be replicated everywhere else. Now, there were some schools who had some programs or who had house systems, right? Where they were saying, oh, I have a house system, students assign points. And it was very kind of like, if I could describe it, very just points based, competition based, and so forth. Yeah, some students started bonding through that teamwork effort, but the intention was a little different, I would say. And that's not every school. Some schools did have the intention of creating some really great relationships. But I think what we did, there's a secret sauce that we kind of added to the formula that made it fun, that created relationships, that broke many barriers in our school, that allowed students to achieve greatness in academics and feel motivated, that allows students to feel seen and heard and that they have their talents recognized, but that also allows students to actually improve behavior in class. Students were now more wanting to be more alert in class, more money, wanting to contribute more to the lesson or earn opportunities to earn points for their house because they are also creating, they are also contributing and being recognized for those contributions. So we love that so much that we decided we should share this with the world. So we decided we're going to share it with the world. So we have our 4 houses, the house of Amistad, which is the red house of friendship. Amistad is a Spanish word that means friendship. They're like the protectors of the realm. They're their knights. They also represent the royal peacock. Like it's literally like that's who the house of Amistad is. Then you have Revere. That's the blue house. That's French for dreaming. So Revere, they're the dreamers. They call themselves the wolf pack. So all 4 houses have identities. We have the house of Altruismo, which is the black house of givers. And then we also have the house of Isabindi, which is Zulu for courage. All of these houses right here, and if you notice, the words are representing different places from the world. We have Amistad from Mexico, we have Altruismo from South America, we have Revere from Europe, then we have Isabindi from South Africa, right? And when we're looking at those things, Mr. Clark wanted representation of cultures from around the world associated with the house. And recently, this past year, we actually unveiled 4 new houses that are actually kind of being spread across the world as well. So we're loving it. We have schools using our house system or RCA inspired house system in Australia. We have them in Bermuda, Argentina, Chile, Northern Africa. We actually had, I remember it was a cool group of educators who came from Haiti and who translated the Revere house chair into French and so forth. So it's for us, it's just been magical watching this movement happen, and more schools are rolling it out. We have a school district, an entire school district that's rolled, Katy ISD in Texas. They're rolling out houses at their school, and people are reporting on the change, the improvement they're seeing in behavior, camaraderie, academic excellence, and so forth. And there's just a lot of great things that are happening. So we're super excited. And while we saw this excitement kind of happening, we're like, people need ways of tracking points, right? So our house system, our RCA House Points software is actually a very unique software that not only provides like licensing and different things for people who want to use our houses, but very dynamic ways, cool animations, cool techniques and tricks that you can kind of use, and little Easter eggs you can unlock. That's really, it's a game changer for our environment. It's a game changer for environments all around the world who are using our house system. So it's when I look at the house system, it's a package. You have We do some PD, professional development, and allow you the opportunity to kind of see this in action. Then we look at the software itself that tracks the points, where you can run reports and kind of see who's been contributing and where, and how teachers have even been contributing to points as well, how they've been assigning points and making sure there aren't any biases or anything there. And then there's the house system itself, which is a home away from home for the kids. And collectively, when I tell you those things are, it's changing education as we know it, and I'm loving what I'm seeing from it.
For sure. It's a really cool platform. And I know for our team, it's been so fun just working on something that has a lot of personality and, has these animations and Easter eggs, like you said. And, we get to work on a lot of cool stuff, but most projects don't have, dragon animations and all kinds of stuff like that. So it's been pretty awesome. So my next question, anyone who's been in startup or tech world knows launching a new product is a huge undertaking, comes with its ups and downs. What have been the biggest challenges for you all with the RCA House Points app? The biggest challenges you faced, and how have you all overcome them?
Whoa, that's a really big question right there. When we were first looking at this house point system, and thinking like, as a school, we're not a software company per se, but we have all these really innovative ideas. And we were like, you know what, this is something that we need to do. This is something that we need to spearhead on our end. So of course, when you're launching everything or anything, no matter how much research you do, no matter how much input, there's strategies that you look at, there's always going to be some learning curves. And I think for us, we learned, really to take things step by step. Because what we found was when we're looking at our model house system and what we do, there were other things that kind of align with that same model. And when we were designing our software, we were designing our software specifically for the house system. But what we didn't recognize was there were like other PBIS systems that could have also benefited from our house system model. And we've been able to marry the two ideas. So we found ourselves, we built for a house system, which is really great. But then we started having schools who might have a mandate of sorts, right? Where all of their schools must use a PBIS system of sorts. And part of that PBIS system required them to do certain things or required certain features that we didn't necessarily include as part of our environment. So now we find ourselves kind of like okay, looking at this space and looking at this opportunity, now trying to customize our software to also meet some of the additional needs that these schools have. When people talk about schools and what comes down from their state, like the restrictions and the requirements, another thing we learned about was a lot of like legal issues. Like when you start looking at service agreements, there were some service agreements where, we looked at it and it literally was requiring RCA to take on all the liability if something were to happen. Now, of course, if you're talking about like a data breach or some type of issue that would come along that was a vulnerability in the software and so forth, of course, that's one of the areas that we can sit here and say as an organization or as a company that, this is something that would require us to take a look at and be accountable for, right? But on another note, if a teacher left a computer up, or if administrator was logged in on a kiosk or a system at the airport and left it up and somebody was able to access student data, that shouldn't be something we're responsible for. But some of the contracts that I was seeing were actually they were really tight knit and didn't leave. It seems like the software agreement was written for a different type of software than what we were providing, because we only use directory information anyways. But nonetheless, it still was something that was a huge deal, because our legal team had to talk to other legal teams back and forth, and sometimes we couldn't come to agreement because we were like, yeah, we can't accept liability for negligence or misuse of the app by your employees if you're not willing to put that in writing. So for us, it was, that was some of the struggles that we ran into. Then, of course, funding. We're a nonprofit. We're a private school. We're already using all of our funds to subsidize scholarships for our students and so forth. And now we're taking on this app, and apps require development and they require time. And when something goes wrong or something needs to be fixed, there's, or an update happens that's causing a malfunction in the app, like, all these things have to be addressed. And trying to address those in the midst of a pandemic is also something that was like, oh my gosh, like I remember we had to cut, we're in a we were almost like at the tail end of a major upgrade, and we just had to stop. We had to stop development. And I was like, no. Um, so I was freaking out. But of course, it's because, of course, as an organization, we had to make sure that we were, being fiscal responsible and prioritizing the things that were going to be considered most important for the survival of the organization. So COVID really threw a wrench in that, since, a lot of our proceeds come from, actually the majority of our proceeds come from educator training, and we weren't allowed to really train a single educator in person because of COVID. They weren't allowed to travel. There were all these restrictions. So it's a lot of things that we've kind of learned. But I would say between those were probably the biggest lessons that we were learning during this time period. Now there was a bright light in the midst of all of that. Was many schools were sharing how important the house system and how important the house app were during the pandemic.
Right.
And I think that's something that truly meant a lot to us, because schools credit us for keeping their school together. And that meant the world to us. That meant the world of opportunity. And just, we just love where it was going prior to the pandemic. But now we also see the house system emerging from the pandemic. And it's a really huge movement. More and more people are signing up to do houses, signing up for the app, and we're just kind of loving just watching it grow.
Yeah, that's awesome. Of course, on our end, we've similarly enjoyed, I do feel like there's a huge momentum behind it right now, which is super exciting. And one of the things you said, it's kind of a good segue to one of my questions, which you touched on a little bit, but there's so many different facets of RCA, right? You've got the school, day-to-day running a school, as you mentioned, your professional development, trainings and conferences, ongoing fundraising efforts. Now in the last few years, you're supporting the technology platform. So what's it been like, trying to essentially do, a technology startup within all these other big initiatives? And just for you personally in your role, you're straddling that direct responsibility to the students in the Dean of Students role, but also Director of IT. So I assume there's no simple, easy answer, but it's, how do you prioritize those things and kind of balance them with everything that's on your plate?
Well, I can tell you this. I work with the world's most phenomenal team of educators that I'm just so appreciative to have. I work with, the visionaries of the school, Ron Clark and Kim Bearden, who really allow us to be flexible with the way that we attack and approach problems and so forth. And one of the things I've loved the most is actually to help me manage the entire school and to help me manage multiple sectors. Like, not only do I have an assistant, Tyrell Cooper, who's our technology specialist, but we have a junior engineers program where our students have the opportunity to kind of learn about the technology in the classroom, learn about operating the technology in our school. And over the years, it's grown to such a point that they pretty much manage a lot of the key things. Like, we will handle much more of what we consider the high ticket items, right? The items that they could not solve or they couldn't figure out what the problem is. But in the classroom, if a teacher is running into an issue, many of our students can get up and solve that issue. If we are in the midst of having a musical and our lighting system is down or something like that, the kids know the steps of troubleshooting that. And again, that kind of frees us up a lot more to deal with the things that are most important. But then we also have staff members who are also willing to kind of jump in and help in at a moment's notice. So when we were looking at the virtual adaptation of education, when we were, going down to a virtual platform for our students, we had some star educators like Dr. Jones and Mr. Daniel Thompson, and where we were sitting there kind of working together in order to pretty much come up with a strategy and a plan. Like, of course, I could have done that by myself, but that would have took me forever. But they are the educators in the room, and having different stakeholders and voices as a part of this conversation allowed us really to truly create a dynamic environment where people can feel supported. Now, in my role of Dean of Students, I'm also, I work with various people. I work with our counselor. I also work with the founders of the school. in order to truly create an environment where students can feel seen, can feel heard, and can feel supported. And that's a lot of work because students they may call, they may send an email, or they just might come to my office, Mr. Byrne, I need to talk to you. And ultimately, students will always be our number one priority and our focus because that is why we are in the building. The students, without the students, we can't have a school. Without a school, we can't train educators. So ultimately, we want to make sure that our students are the major priority. And we encourage our teachers and our staff also to have a backup plan because, technology will be technology at times. And there'll be some moments where I can't run in and assist you with this problem. And at RCA, we all wear a million hats. So there've been times during the educator training experience, I'm on stage literally like presenting either about the house system or about our amazing shake. I'm on stage presenting and I see somebody kind of standing by the doorway looking at me and I'm like, okay, so I present, and after I'm done presenting my part, I turn it on over to Mr. Kirk Brown, who's our director of development, who's going to speak on the next portion. And maybe I know Mr. Brown's workshop is probably about 10 minutes. I mean, his portion of his presentation is about 10 minutes long. So I will leave the stage. I will run all the way down the hallway, go help assist with this issue, come back, grab me something to drink, wipe my face, 'cause I'm sweating now, then wipe my face and present. And then by the time Mr. Brown is done and I come back out, like no one even knew what happened. So literally I always say we're all just superheroes here. Everybody goes above and beyond in our school to create magical moments for our kids, to support the building, support what we do, support educators around the world. And I mean, we have a superstar squad, man. They're a dope squad of people. Like I think they're probably the dopest squad of people I've ever worked with in my life. To be honest with you, because it's like iron sharpening iron, and everybody is involved. So we take turns helping out each other. We take turns trying to find ways to support the programming of the school, and everybody's pretty observant. Our project manager Hutch Jones, like he may actually sit here and look and say, "Hey, Junior, I kind of noticed that the students are typically doing this in the morning, so maybe we can create a new policy that would help to remove this overhead or this bottleneck that's happening here, create a smoother system." And so we're constantly working for maximum efficiency in our building, and we love that everybody kind of walks around, especially like our more technical, logistical minded people. Like we'll come together and put together a plan, and we can actually do it pretty quickly, just because of the way that we think and how many different nuts and bolts and in between things that we're looking at to kind of create what life looks like. And a prime example of that is actually our team that actually helped to put together our coming back to school plan. After like we talked about the pandemic, but now it's like, oh, we're coming back in person. What does that look like? What does that look like in regards of technology? What does that look like in regards of social distancing, spacing? What does that look like in regards of classroom and so forth? So we literally transform our entire building to be socially distanced. We transform our gymnasium to support a room that could have 53 kids all socially distanced in there so that they can eat lunch whilst also being separated. But we also want to find ways of making it fun, so we allowed them to go outdoors because at the time they were suggesting, a lot of outdoors activities. So students had breaks outdoors and different shifts where they also feel like they were, throughout the day getting breaks from the mask, from having the mask mandate and having your mask on all day. Some teachers had little plexiglass screens that were see-through. So again, it would block off, it almost served like a face shield, but it would block off, but students can see their teacher and hear their mouth and hear the different things that are happening. I can tell you that we had an awesome sponsor, Audio Enhancement, and they have quite a few products. And one of their products is a classroom microphone system that also integrates with a camera system called ViewPath, right? So literally our teachers were able to not only present in the classroom, but then also have a camera that's capturing them and also present that virtually at the same time with the audio from the microphone filling up the classroom, but also being transferred to the Zoom classroom at the same time. So when we talked about creating a truly collective experience where we called Mission Control, which was our students who were virtual, that was their cool name, Mission Control, where they can still participate in the all school activities. They weren't just a siloed group of students who we're virtual. Like, no. We had a hybrid model where teachers didn't have to teach an additional class session But what they could do is teach it hybrid without it causing a huge strain on what it is that they needed to do. And we had the most loving students ever who would monitor a Zoom, say, "Oh, such and such has a question," just in case the class might have been a little too loud and couldn't hear them. Made sure the students had a voice as well. So we put together a plan where we came together, and there's about 3 or 4 of us. Actually, no, sorry, it was 6 of us that came together, and we had it running like clockwork. When I say clockwork, we had no breakouts in our building. Literally everything, anytime we had a situation where something was of concern, we had a medical team we worked with called Ascend Medical, and they came in and we did testing every Monday.
Oh, wow.
Every Monday, we had a system. We had a numbering system for carpools and pickups and different things. So we had it under control. It was a lot of work. I will say that, but it was so effective. And what that showed us was, wow, we created a way for our students to be safe in school, but also attend school and enjoy it. And then we started rolling in the opportunities for visiting educators and different ways that we can kind of include them in the equation, because again, we also had to get some additional funding coming back into the school after not being able to train educators for almost a year. So it was tough for us. It was tough. I will say that it was tough. But I will say it's something that showed us like, wow, we have some real magic makers in our building to help make this possible, for our students to feel like they can come to school, be safe, still have fun, still train educators and create magic. And, for us, it was a godsend.
For sure. Yeah, it's awesome. And I think you all have been firing on all cylinders always, but especially through COVID. And I definitely admire like how everyone's kind of come together to not just make it work to kind of survive, but make it really vibrant and, still really dynamic and engaging for the students and stuff. So a couple more questions for you. So with the House Points app specifically, you all are still relatively early in the journey, because I think it was launched, a couple years ago at this point. So what does success look like, for the product longer term, like a year from now, 5 years from now? Where do you all want to take that?
Ooh, it's funny. When we first opened up our house system to like officially to the public, like schools were kind of using it unofficially. But when we first opened it up officially to the public, I said to Ron, 5 years from now, you won't be able to recognize it. Right. And, we kind of looked and we laughed about it and we joked. And when I tell you, short term is that every school in the U.S. will have a place that students can call home. That's what success looks like, right? In regards to the app, all of those schools will also have an app that says RCA House Points on it, that they can use to literally support that environment and to support that mission. I believe, long term, the RCA House system is about to transform a lot of places in the world. It will create light in a lot of dark places. It will inspire educators to do a little more and recognize their importance in this mission. But most importantly, it will have long distance created families that students will begin to kind of see. Like we hear stories, right? Like Mr. Clark was somewhere one day and he's walking around. I forget what state he was in. He was walking around, I think, to go get some food, and he looks up and there's a kid with a reverse shirt on. So of course he's freaking out. He's like, "Oh my gosh, you have on a reverse shirt!" Like, yeah, we're growing, and now you're finding your extended. Not only do you create a sense of belonging in your school, but now you'll have the opportunity to be connected worldwide and look at a worldwide like communities and so forth. So when I look at long-term success, that's what it is: connections, a network of people that can all help to support one another because they all had something in common.
For sure. Yeah, I love it. It's a great mission, and it's well underway, I know. So last question I had for you, for someone who is in the early stages of pursuing a new digital product or thinking about, launching something or doing a startup, what advice would you give them given your experience so far with this new platform?
I would say, when you look at launching anything new, there tends to be, you must kind of go through a checklist of things, right? To check to see if you're ready, right? I would say that checklist is probably 60% of the battle because there'll be so many other things that you probably didn't have the opportunity to think about. Even if you have a very dynamic team, there's some things that will come up and some opportunities that you will see. But what I would probably say most importantly is take the chance. Take the chance. Like, you will spend a lot of time thinking and deliberating and wondering if this is a good idea and so forth. Like, no, it will tell you whether it's a good idea or not. You will find out.
Right.
But hopefully it is a good idea. But Mr. Clark kind of told us, one of the things he had said when we were getting ready to launch this, he said, Junior, just sometimes you have to jump. You have to jump. He said, if you don't take the jump, you're never going to know. So take the jump. And so that's what my advice for people would be. Like, do your research, take your time to do your research and think. But the moment where you're contemplating, like, am I ready? Am I ready to do this? Is this the right timing and so forth? Just take the jump. Because the last thing you need is to be your own obstacle. Right. Because you mentally are not prepared for the magic that can actually happen. So that would be my suggestion. That would be my biggest suggestion for for anyone, because we can easily talk ourselves out of decisions.
Right. I love it. And it's so true. I mean, there is never a perfect time. You're never 100% ready for anything. And as you know and have alluded to, it's, there's things you can't predict. There's unknowns. The only way you start to get into it is by jumping in and learning as you go. That's great advice. So looks like we're about out of time. I really appreciate you coming on, Junior. This was great. Before we sign off, where can listeners go to connect with you and learn more about RCA and the House Points app as well?
All right, awesome. Well, anybody who's looking to connect with me, I can be reached at my website, which is www.juniorbernadin.com. If you're interested in connecting with the school, our website is www.ronclarkacademy.com. And we have multiple, social media platforms. So on Instagram, you can find me. I'm Mr. J Bernadin. And of course, RCA is ronclarkacademy.com as well. And anybody who's interested in the house system, specifically, if you go on our website or if you go to www.rcahousesystem.com, you'll find a ton of information. You find our guidebooks, resources, assets, and different things that, you may know of a school in your local area that might be needing this opportunity. So feel free to share it, because parents can also share these opportunities with schools, or parents can share them with schools. And I just think it'll be a great way, again, to help us spread the word, spread the magic, because it is a game changer. And it's a place where students now are not just a part of a house, they're part of a culture.
For sure. Well, thank you so much, Junior. It's been really great having you on, and looking forward to getting this episode live. I'm sure that listeners will enjoy hearing all your good insights. So thank you again for coming on The Digital Footprint.
All right. I so appreciate you, Richard, and thank you for supporting us in our mission and Tyrannosaurus Tech's impact with us being able to have the House System app and running and helping us to create new features to, again, touch the lives of not only just our educators, but just everyone.
Of course. We love it. All right. Thanks again, Junior. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Richard.
Thank you for listening to The Digital Footprint. This show is brought to you by Tyrannosaurus Tech, an award-winning technology partner dedicated to designing and developing high-impact software products. If you like what you heard in this episode, make sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. For show notes and access to all episodes, please visit tyrannosaurustech.com/blog. Digital Footprint.